hurry and race through our day, doing the same thing over and over. But there's another way, the Fly Now way. We're going to start here with a man who embodies the Fly Now spirit, Bob Hamilton. By day, he works on aircraft. Evenings and weekends, he can be found pursuing his passion. He skydives and flies experimental airplanes, like this Pitts S-1C biplane. Nicely done, Bob.
I think, the book, Life Short, Fly Now, was like chapter 1 maybe of my life, Brian Kissinger. And the movie Fly Now is totally different. It's what we're, as a group are doing as a reality aviation documentary, or a RAD. Totally new concept, never been done before. So I think it brings in, the aspects of a reality show that everybody knows about, in America at least. You can't script it. I mean, we saw that on Saturday when we had a successful emergency engine out landing just south of here a couple miles. No damage, no injuries. We flew the airplane out. We got good footage on it.
Just out there flying, and Mike pitched it up and it quit on us, so we just had to land on a road in a field. So nobody got hurt. The airplane's not hurt. We'll fly again.
You can't script stuff like that. You can't script life. A lot of times, we all have this plan A that we want to do in our life, and we have to go to plan B or plan C. And that's, I think, the story of my life, what I wrote in Life Short, Fly Now. But I think more importantly, what we're doing for the movie is aviation. And it's a lot of people's lives. It's not just mine. It's that eternal spirit of aviation that we talk about a lot too. That's, been there since people have been trying to fly. I know we're going to have Da Vinci's quote in there about looking up to the sky, and since you do fly, you just look up all the time.
Good afternoon. We're here to pick up a Putin pole.
So often we lose focus of our dreams and march through our days just caring for our needs. Some realize that to attain their dreams, it must come with sacrifice.
Flying is something, once it gets in your blood, I mean, it's in your blood, you can't get it out, no matter how hard you try. It's like a disease. Right. So you're going to be a pilot, you're a pilot. You want to be a pilot, you're going to do everything you can to get to that point if you got pilot in your blood. In the past, the airlines have had a tremendous supply of free pilots, basically. Pilots that either paid for their own training or the military paid for it, but they were trained somewhere else, and they came into the system, and they basically would fly for free because they want to fly. They love to fly, or almost free. And what's happened now is economics have caught up with it. So it costs $250,000 today to learn to become and get all the training and the hours that you need to become a commercial airline pilot. It's $250,000, which is a lot of money. It takes 6.5 to 8 years to accomplish that. So we're talking about a lot of money, a lot of time. We got an 87% washout rate, so you may not even get there. And then when you get done with this $250,000 investment and this 6.5 to 8 years, they want to pay you $21,000 a year to start, and they'll move you up to $35,000 after a couple years. So what we've got right now is we've got about 1/3 of the commercial airline pilots in the United States that are making less than $35,000 a year. That's what's causing the backlog, because somebody can't go out and spend $250,000 to make $35,000. So the numbers aren't working. So obviously, something's got to give.
So until something gives, we'll have fun in our Piper Cubs. At the Sun and Fun Air Show in Lakeland, Florida, we met a lot of inspiring people. Pilots.
Anything is possible. I was a farm kid in Iowa, grew up driving a tractor, watching airplanes fly overhead, but I always had this passion to fly. And if I'd have told my teacher when I was 14 years old that I was going to grow up and fly most of the significant fighters of World War II, that just wasn't a reasonable goal. Nor was it a reasonable goal for a black kid in Detroit, Michigan in 1935 to want to fly and fight for his country. So if you want it bad enough and you can draw a target on the wall, you can do anything. And like the Tuskegee Airmen proved it, I have too. I've been richly blessed to fly some amazing airplanes, and this is one of my favorites right here.
We met teachers.
We volunteer here at Sun and Fun because, without the knowledge you can't do anything, and knowledge is cheap. And if they want hands-on knowledge, they come down here and we work with them. You can still do things by hand. It's a lot more labor intensive, but that's the way you learn how things are done. So we like to show everybody that comes in here that you can shape metal. It's really a crude shop. We've only got several machines in here, plus an English wheel, but we can show them what they need to know to make fairings and make metal aircraft shape here.
We met dreamers.
Well, my dream right now is to hopefully make it into the Air Force Academy.
Okay.
So I'm going to try and do that.
You got a favorite plane you want to fly in the Air Force?
Probably the F-22.
F-22.
We met builders.
Hi, I'm Kim Cush. I'm from South Dakota, and I'm a serial airplane builder.
Kim told us a story about Experimental Aircraft Association President Paul Poberezny.
Paul said there's a modification for the cockpit that stretches it out for larger people, and he got me all interested in it, and I was really trying to pry the information out of him, and he was, well, so what is it, Paul? Come on, how do they do it? It's called a diet.
All right.
So anyway, so we had a good laugh out of that one.
One man we met achieved his dream by building this high-performance Lancer Legacy.
It's a lot of work, but it's a labor of love. A lot of hours, immense persistence, but if you enjoy doing something, then it's not work. And I think for a lot of pilots, and especially people that build their own airplanes, it's not an adrenaline rush. It's not about pushing the envelope, doing aerobatics for me. It's about precision. It's about executing a flight plan professionally with air traffic control, planning, having a professional response to anomalies or unexpected events. That, for me, that's the thrill. The multitasking. When I tell people that don't fly and they're very inquisitive, I say it's not, any one task in flying is not hard at all. What makes it challenging is managing all of the things you have to do at once. You have to fly the airplane, maintain situational awareness, communicate, aviate, navigate, and communicate.
The international audience we have here, people thinking about maybe building an airplane, what advice or tips would you give them?
I would tell them do it. There's never going to be an ideal time. You're never going to have enough money and enough time. It'll always be just out there. Just start it and do it. And it all comes together. And you hear the same thing from people that start their own businesses. There's never the right time. You never have enough time or money. There's always something. So you just do it.
Airshow performer Jerry Kirby is also an experimental aircraft builder. He built the RV-8 that he flies in the show.
Flying is the greatest freedom you can ever have. You know, I've been doing this since I was 15 years old. And I took my first ride in an airplane when I was 10 years old. And it was a penny a pound at the local county fair. And my dad paid 75 cents for me to get in a 172 in the back. And I remember being up there looking at the cars traveling down the road, and it looked like little ants going towards an anthill. And I go, you know, this is for me, even at that young age. And I myself started when I was 15. I sold it on my 16th birthday, my license on my 17th birthday, and then I had my commercial instrument instructor when I was 18. And the day I turned 23, I had my ATP license. So forever and ever, 4,500 hours before I ever went in the military, and flew F-15s and Phantoms and commanded a squadron. And I've lived a very, very blessed life, and it's all been due to, you know, the God-given talents that I have, flying airplanes, and I couldn't be more blessed.
And to the kids in the audience there, what type of tips or advice would you give them?
Oh, it's you know, it's pretty stock advice. It's you know, live a clean life, know God, stay off drugs, stay in school, all the basic tenets of, you know, just living a good life, and God's going to take care of you. I had the wonderful opportunity to fly my wife in the back of a Phantom.
Oh, wow.
And we did some, it was just very special for me to take her up into that much power and that much living history, and share that with the one that I love the most. And,
as we were taking off down the taxiway, and I felt water dripping on my face, and I couldn't figure out where it was coming from. And I reached up to wipe it off my face, and I hit my visor, and I realized I was crying.
and she goes, I'm crying. I go, are you okay? I go, is this too much power? I mean, is it too much vibration? What's going on? And she goes, no, I'm crying. I'm so happy. I can't believe I'm in an F-4 Phantom with my husband, and we're gonna, you know, do this. And this was as we just lifted off the ground, and, you know, I'm in full afterburner. I'm getting the gear up. I'm accelerating to the end of the runway, and I'm going to do this pull-up, and I'm going to go, is she ready for this pull-up? I have no idea what her mental state is until she goes, no, I'm fine. And then we did this max performance climb right off the end of the runway at Oshkosh, and it was glorious, you know.
It was truly overwhelming to be in the back seat with my husband flying in such a powerful jet, and to actually feel all of that. And to know that that was part of history too, that aircraft meant so much to so many of these veterans that we had met on the airshow circuit together. And it just was an overwhelming moment. And I'm not a crier, so the fact that these tears were like flowing and there was nothing I could do.
It was that flight that, you know, there's a lot of pictures out there of the F-4, but our friend Tyson Renninger actually was in the back of a B-25, and that flight was to go out with a lot of other airplanes. I think we had 13 airplanes in this formation to go up and rejoin behind this B-25 going 180 knots, full power downhill to try to get these phantom shots. And you can look it up, but that's me and her in the airplane, and it's a really famous phantom shot. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, Tyson, it's been used all over the world on the cover of many magazines and things, and it's just exciting to always look at that and go, that's us. Yeah. And we're part of that, and it was truly one of the most exciting flights I've ever done.
Yeah.
Right up there in the top 2.
Beautiful. Yeah. You guys are even more part of it.
In Florida, we also spoke with Major General Clay McCutcheon, Air Force retired. His father flew P-40s with the Flying Tigers in China.
What do you like about flying, Clay?
Well, I grew up with it. My dad was a World War II fighter pilot and flew in the 14th Air Force in China. And Mom went through the civilian pilot training program here in World War II. And so in the late 40s, they were avid sport pilots. And I grew up in a family of sport pilots. Some of my earliest memories are my mom flying me around in a J-3 float plane in the Destin Fulham Beach area.
Can you remind us about your parents' names also?
Oh, it's James Robert McCutcheon and Lucille Gammon McCutcheon.
And I remember, because we've known each other for a while, I remember that one story you told me about your dad and I think Charles Lindbergh, was it, flying?
Oh yeah, he was flying as a test pilot in Eglin and was flying an actual test program that Lindbergh was working on, the P-47. And Dad was in the P-47 over Eglin and saw a gull-wing Corsair coming in from the west from Pensacola. And so he went down to teach this Navy guy a lesson not to invade Army Air Force territory. And of course, the gull-wing Corsair just beat Dad to pieces and followed him all the way in just behind his tail. Dad thought he had bounced some Navy captain was going to get court-martialed, but as it turned out, it was Charles Lindbergh. Lindbergh just got out of his airplane, walked over, said, "Hi, I'm Charles Lindbergh," and walked away and never said another thing. And Mom and Dad and I, in 1979, built a private one-family airport to support our sport flying habit. And it was a way of life. We didn't play golf. We didn't hunt or fish. We flew light planes. That's what we did.
We still do that today, right?
And we do. Mom and Dad have passed away, but we're still continuing the tradition at McCutcheon Intergalactic Spaceport and flying Cubs and Chance and that sort of thing.
Right. And you have a flying club too, or a group of friends?
It's kind of an informal outfit known as the Black Ducks. Their motto is "Never quack up."
Never quack up. Yeah. Great. And what's one of your favorite sport planes to fly?
Well, I started out in a Ryan PT-22. That was my first real sport plane that I flew. Dad owned it, and he had closed up the front seat and put a 220 Continental in the front. It was a single-seater, and we used it to tow gliders and sport aerobatics. He used it for air shows for a while. I didn't get into the air show, but I did use it to tow gliders and just do sport aerobatics.
We met some friends from back home.
Dale, where are you and what are you doing?
I'm at Sun and Fun, just daydreaming.
What are you dreaming about here?
What it'd be like to have a new ultralight instead of 3 used ones.
A story.
Must have a story. Don't worry, we can splice it and take it. So think about it for a second.
Let me think about it.
About flying in and having to hold down the plane and the highway.
Oh
in
yeah.
California?
When we lived in California, we had a Champ. Was our first airplane, and you know how the Champ, how light it is, and that. We went out flying one day and went down south of Monterey, California, and we needed to get gas. We landed at this field, and the wind was so high that we couldn't taxi. You couldn't turn the plane.
Okay.
It was just weather cuts. So Liz got out of the plane and held onto the tail, and we taxied up to the fuel pump. I stayed in the plane, and the guys came out, refueled us, and he said, just take off from here. And from here was, the fuel pump was right between a rows of hangars. And we took off between that row of hangars, and we were in the air probably in 20 feet.
Yeah.
And just flew down through that row of hangars. Yeah. Everybody's looking out of the hangars saying, what the hell's he doing?
Try not to ground loop it, right?
That's right.
It's like, okay, that was an adventure.
I've never been in the winds like that in the Champ before.
So it's amazing to have a great co-pilot and ground handler.
Yeah, she held it down.
We're a good team. Always been a good team.
That's important, right?
Yep.
Yeah,
that's what you're all about.
That's really important. That's all it's about.
Yeah, you guys are an amazing aviation couple. You don't see that too often.
Thank you.
Big air shows like Sun and Fun always have a lot of very interesting aircraft, from the old to the new. Some of the most interesting are the old warbirds. All of these are flying museum pieces, relics of history that are now so old there are very few people left that remember when they were used in the Second World War.
All right, can you tell us a little bit about this airplane that you fly?
Yeah, this is a B-17G. It belongs to the Experimental Aircraft Association out of Oshkosh, Wisconsin. Some 160,000 members worldwide.
Right.
And we have this airplane. We take it on tour around the United States to promote EAA and aviation and to share the history of World War II and the difference this airplane made.
How does it make you feel when you fly this airplane?
Well, it's quite humbling, actually. It's just, it's just, the first time I flew it, it was kind of like you get this, you just can't believe that young men were in this, flying it and doing battle, and they had all of 250 hours of flight experience.
Right.
And now that I've been flying it for a while, I still have kind of the same deal.
Right.
I mean, it hasn't changed. I mean, I just really get that presence of what it must have been like, and I'm just awestruck. And then occasionally we get to meet a veteran, and I get to hear the stories, and you just kind of really relate, And I mean, we're flying it without getting shot at. We're flying it without, knowing that we're going to come back. Knowing that the airplane's maintained, not worried about that. Knowing that we don't have to do one more mission before we go home.
Right.
So it's a real privilege to be able to fly under those conditions. But I can't imagine what it would have been like with being 21, 22, 250 hours of flight time, and you've just done your second mission maybe, and on your first mission you saw somebody shot down or airplanes lost, and you got to go back out and do 23 more. I can't imagine what that must have been like.
Tough, right?
Yeah.
Air shows often include a car show.
I consider myself the average guy. I mean, I like a lot of things. I appreciate classic cars. I've gone to air shows before. So if you were to ask me, as just the man on the street, what I think of something like this, I think it's the marriage of two perfect hobbies. You have folks that, have this interest in going fast and expensive toys, if you will, in the airplanes. And then you have the folks that will go fast with expensive toys on the ground. So you're seeing a lot of the same interest in the classic cars as you do, I think, with the airplanes. Only one flies and one drives.
Let's get this show airborne.
I'm Patrick Mackley from St. Louis, Missouri, and I'm an airshow pilot. I've always had a passion for flying, and it's been in my blood. My dad introduced it to me when I was 5, and pretty much ever since, it's been airplanes in my family, and I've helped I've helped build 3 with him, and then ended up kind of breaking off to my destiny that I decided when I was 12 I wanted to fly air shows. When I first saw Sean Tucker at Oshkosh, that was the big thing. one of the biggest things you hear is the people's champion. And I always think of myself as a people's performer. You know, I try not to, no matter how big I get, yeah, I want to fly Oshkosh, I want to have the big names on the airplane, make the big bucks, but I'm not going to ever stop, you know, who I am and not helping that little boy that, you know, wants to learn to fly one day and just hang out with the big dogs. I'm going to go everywhere. That's what I want to do. I want to do little shows, big shows, all together. You know, but yeah, we do have to make ends meet. So, you know, unfortunately, you do have to go to the paycheck first, but I'll never quit doing the little stuff either.
Well, we're back over here at Hangar 19 at the Fly Now studio, and Brian Kissinger and the man, Steve Morley, are working on beans, putting it back together, getting it ready for condition inspection. And this is part of the Fly Now spirit. This is where everybody just gets together and takes care of business. So Brian, take a minute here and tell me about Fly Now.
Well, Fly Now is just a great concept for everybody. It's just reality, and it's like now. Like what we're doing right now is working on this airplane, as we mentioned, and trying to get it back flying for, you know, our future trips that we're doing, Broadhead, Oshkosh, and other air shows. And that's just it. We're going to try to capture this flying season, 2015, and just the people. You know, one person that we're with today is Tricky Steve Morley, which is the engine man. He's very humble. Oh yeah. He is the man. I mean, he's got, you know, numerous records with other drivers and racers. And I was fortunate to meet him, and Greg Rooster Dehan introduced us, and we're back here today fixing this airplane. I mean,
tell me how we apply this philosophy of Fly Now to anybody in everyday life.
Sure. Yeah, in reality, all we have is right now. You know, we've talked about that a little bit before. But you know, yesterday's already gone. Tomorrow may not come for some of us. Hopefully for all of us watching this, but you never really know.
You don't know.
We all know somebody that's, you know, went to bed and didn't wake up at any age. You know, young, middle age, or old, and you know, just appreciate the now, appreciate the people you're with, and enjoy it. And you know, we're going to do that with this this flying movie.
I started flying powered parachutes about 5 years ago. I've flown 4-engine jet transports all over the globe. I've flown supersonic, low and slow, and a powered parachute is absolutely the best flying I've ever done. You're down low, moving about 30 miles an hour. In a fixed wing airplane, you might fly low and see how the shadow of the barn is cast out on the ground. In a powered parachute, you notice how the shadow of the barn falls across the sleeping dog, and you've got time to check out the dog. It's just relaxing, perfectly safe. It's just a fun way to fly.
In the middle of the last century, there were many opportunities in aviation, but they slowly started to disappear, and now there's a shortage of pilots and support personnel. Thankfully, new programs are starting up at colleges and high schools like this one in St. Louis, the Aircraft Maintenance Program at Gateway STEM.
My name's Miranda Ruther, and I'm a senior at Gateway STEM High School, and I'm part of the aviation program.
Gateway STEM is one of only 4 high schools in the country that are certified by the FAA to teach airframe and power plant. We are the only school in the country that are partnered with a college. So the classroom demographic is, I'll have a high school student sitting right next to an adult student. For example, I have one student who's 42 years old and has been 22 years in the Navy, sitting right next to a 15-year-old girl who loves aviation.
My goal is to get my airframe and power plant license through the school and go on and maybe work for Jet Aviation or Boeing, or go into the Air Force and work on fighter jets and continue my career with that, probably painting or engine repair.
My goal here is to eventually make it to the Boeing facility. Currently, because of this program, I was able to obtain a job in the industry.
good news for new opportunities. At AirVenture, we met a party of young student pilots.
When I was about 8 years old, that's when I first got my first flight just north of here at Green Bay. I grew up around the northern Wisconsin area here, so I was always going to Oshkosh, always growing up around this atmosphere. But ever since I was 2 months old, I was on commercial jets flying all over the country. And it just built into me with all that flying to want to be up in the sky. And more I flew commercially, the more and more that I just wanted to be up in the sky. And by 8, I started flying myself. And by 16, I was flying by myself. And now, now my end goal is to be have every license, go through twin float, go helicopter, have MEI, and it just continues going.
What's your ultimate goal?
My ultimate goal right now is looking to be either a medical air flight for helicopter or a corporate jet flyer, corporate helicopter flyer. At the end of the day, flying's flying, and if I'm in the sky, I'm happy. So, yeah, as long as I'm in the sky, at the end of the day, I would do anything to be up in the sky. If it requires me to go fly a small little Cessna all the way up to a 777, it'll put a smile on my face.
Yeah, I just soloed about 3 weeks ago, and I'm looking to take my written test when I get back, and then my check ride before I go off to college. So.
Where are you in school?
I'm going to start my first year of college in August. So that's kind of why I started flying, because I'm going to school in LA, and I live in Clovis in the Central Valley, so I'm hoping to be able to fly back and forth instead of doing the 6-hour drive.
What is your flying goal?
Flying goal? Well, my short-term goal is to take my check ride before I go to college, and then while I'm at my first year of college, I want to get instrument rated throughout, within that first year. And not sure about a long-term goal yet. That's part of why I'm here. I wanted to look more into different aviation careers and stuff, and yeah, I'm not sure yet.
And so we dropped our tanks.
Colonel Bud Anderson, wingman with Chuck Yeager, talks about his favorite Mustang.
First of all, Colonel Anderson, I want to thank you for your service to our nation. God bless you. Having flown both the B and the D version, which one did you prefer and why?
Oh yeah, which airplane do I like best? Well, I like them both. The B bottles classically came with a birdcage canopy, but when we put these canopies on like this, they're just about as good as the bubble canopy, and maybe even a little better, because you can actually stick your head out and count the engine stacks. Not that that's important, but it shows you how much you can see around in it. I think they had a different dash number engine. I'm not sure you could measure the performance difference, but some guys said they wanted Bs because they have a different dash engine. When I came back, mine was, it had already been transferred to another pilot, but he finished his tour, and then it was considered a warbird. It was up at what was called Faber College, kind of a training thing. And so it wasn't available, but there was no choice. I took a D because I wanted the 6 guns rather than the 4 guns. I don't know if that gives you the answer, but I like them both. I shot more airplanes down with the B, but I like the firepower on the D.
Burt Rutan, of Spaceship One fame, was also attending AirVenture. A film crew was following him, making a documentary of his life. Burt had no time for us, but that's okay because we had the opportunity to sit down with Brian Terwilliger, award-winning director of 1-6 Right and the recently released Living in the Age of Airplanes, narrated by Harrison Ford, and now playing in IMAX theaters around the world.
Ever since I was a little kid, I've loved planes, I've loved aviation. I went to air shows, model planes, so I don't know what actually first started the bug, but aviation's been in my blood, been a passion for me for a long, long time. So when I became a teenager, my best friend who I flew model planes with got his pilot's license. He took me up for a flight. I couldn't believe he's 19 or 18 at the time. As a pilot, you know, I'm flying full-scale aircraft, so I could do it too if he could, and so I went out and got my first lesson, and 3 months after that flight with him, I soloed. 6 months later, I got my license, so within a year or so.
And that's what makes you feel now, like when you go flying?
Well, it's great. I mean, it's still pretty surreal, but you know, that being a pilot of an airplane, you know, when you grow up as a kid, it just seems like this impossible dream, you know, but then when you're really doing it on your own, you know, it's pretty spectacular.
So now you're a filmmaker and a documentarian,
Yep.
and the first movie was 1/6 Right?
That's right. Yep.
And can you tell us more about that, or tell the audience more about that?
Yeah, 1/6 Right, or yeah. So my first film was 1/6 Right, which is about the romance of flying and about my romance with flying, and I think everybody's romance with flying that flies. And so I interviewed 80-something people, and asked them effectively, you know, why they fly, what they love about flying, and stories, and centered around the main character, which was Van Nuys Airport, which was my home airport, and where I learned to fly. So that's where the people are based, and of course the story centers around one place, because you know, to develop the story, it was important that it had some central, you know, concept. But effectively, it's really about how incredible it is, and how much people love to fly, why they fly, the feeling of flying. Yeah, right, it really is, yeah. And so, very much from the pilot perspective, and just capturing so many people's stories, just tell my story about what I love about it. But therefore, it becomes, I think, everybody's story. So I think the same reason. There's something very, very similar about pilots, and how much they love it, why they love it, and they really love it. You know, pilots, I think, I haven't met a pilot that kind of likes to fly, or it's pretty cool, you know, but I'd like a lot of other things as much or better. Not so much, you know, it's usually pretty much consistent.
So now fast forward today, and you're living in the age of airplanes. You want to tell us what that's all about, your project?
So after I finished 1/6 Right, that film really captured the romance of flying, and it was a pilot-oriented story about pilots, why they love to fly, why we love to fly, and from that perspective. But as much as it connected with pilots, it was really the choir. The film was really preaching to the choir about how awesome it is that we can fly, and how awesome it is that airplanes do what they do and we can fly them. And so I wanted to reach a larger audience somehow with the same passion, the same fascination that I have. It's coming from the same place. The second movie is coming from the same place, but saying it differently and accessing a larger audience in the process. And so the concept of this film, the new film, Living in the Age of Airplanes, is about how the airplane has changed the world and the perspective we've lost, and some of us maybe never had, again, just general audiences, maybe never had, because we're all born into the age of airplanes. We're all born into the time it already exists. So inherently, yeah, we just take it for granted. I think it's human nature. Anything we've always had, it's hard to know a time without it, hard to know what it's like to be without it, if you've never had to have been without it. And that's just the nature of I think, taking something for granted. You know, we haven't had that experience. Outside your own experience, it is hard to have a perspective. So the film, in 47 minutes, tries to do just that, and show for the first 12 minutes, 13 minutes, a world before the plane, how it always was for a very long time. And you can, of course we know, well, yeah, of course you couldn't go that far, you couldn't go that fast, you know, of course. But really putting it into perspective and actually showing it and explaining it and seeing how limited life was, and that there were civilizations that rose and fell and they never even knew of each other's existence. You know, these ideas are, you know, pretty dramatic, but completely true. And then you see how fast, how long things didn't change, and then once they started to change, how fast this all happened. It was 200 years from the very first engine of any kind powering anything, steam engine, steamboat, steam train, to ultimately much bigger engines flying much more sophisticated machines, jets and airplanes. And that was 150 years between those two things. So we're all born, most people are born into the jet age at this point, but certainly everyone's born into the age of airplanes. And that is really the point of the film, and to see it in a new way. And even pilots that are seeing it, the perspective and the examples that it pulls out are I think, unique, because we don't necessarily see them this way, because they're so close to us. Yeah.
So you like being a filmmaker more, or a pilot more?
A filmmaker, I'd say. It's more rewarding for the, I mean, a pilot that's my hobby, That's what I love to do, you know, in my spare time, if you will. Filmmaking is my career, and it always has been. Started in high school and then throughout college. But what filmmaking allows me to do is to share something I'm very passionate about with a lot of people. So as a filmmaker, what I'm able to do, any filmmaker, documentarians especially, that are very passionate about something, and I think that every film I've ever seen, it's a documentary, there's passion behind it, there's a story, there's a something that someone is trying to get out and communicate and bottle that up and spread that word, excite people, educate people, scare people, whatever their point might be, whatever their agenda. Yeah, some emotion, exactly, to get something across and hopefully make a difference. I think all films, documentaries specifically, and the documentarians behind them want to make a difference, want to make an impact. And so for me to have that privilege and that opportunity to do that I take it with a lot of respect, because I know how important it is to get it right, or whatever it is I'm trying to say, make sure it's accurate and make sure that I'm doing it to the best that I can. But also there's a lot of responsibility with that, because I think the power of it is potentially very significant, and I want to make sure that I'm using it to the best possible use, especially how much time it takes to make it, that it was really going to be worth it, and that it said something strong that can last a long time, and that was really important to me in both of these films.
That's something that you're making and does last indefinitely.
And yeah, it outlasts me, yeah.
You know, 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now, we're definitely not going to say, wow, I'm sorry that I did that. We're more going to say, I'm sorry, I wish I would have done that. And if we look back 5, 10, 15, 20 years behind us, we're more like that, humans are. So I would just say, you know, fly now and go do it. If you're on the fence of whether you want to learn how to fly, and you don't have to get your license necessarily, just go out and help other people fly. You know, work on the airplanes, learn something, start building an airplane. You know, we know people who have built an airplane, didn't have their pilot's license, but once they got it done, then they learn how to fly. I mean, there's nothing set in stone that you have to do it this way, just do it your way. You know, be yourself. Everybody else is taken, you know, and just make it your dream, make it your goal, and go for it, you know, step by step. So, and that's pretty much it. Just fly now, you know, or use that as a metaphor for whatever you want to do in your life. Just be positive and try to eliminate the negative and the negativity out of your life as best as you can.
We traveled to Brodhead, Wisconsin in July for the Pete and Pole reunion. This is the epitome of grassroots aviation. Dan Helsper built this 1929 designed Pete and Pole air camper over a period of 10 years. It uses a Model A engine, the same as the original.
One day after a flight lesson, I was driving my car down the road to leave the airport, and at that time period, if you remember, there was a lot of airplanes in general aviation. There was a lot of airplanes parked in rows outside. And as I passed row after row of airplanes, I would glance over there to see what was there. And one day I glanced over and I came to an abrupt stop because I saw the most unusual, beautiful airplane that I've ever seen in my entire life. So I pulled over, got out of my car, walked down the row, looked at this parasol wing airplane, and I was just taken aback how beautiful this thing was. And I looked it over, I looked down into the cockpit area and saw the data plate, and it said Pete and Pole Air Camper. And so ever since that day, I had kind of a dream. And I was a model airplane builder at the time anyway, and I just told myself that that was the airplane that I was going to build someday.
Here we met young Ben Preston, who has drawn that target on the wall and taken aim.
Well, I'm a senior in high school right now, and after I finish high school, I'm going to do a year in Santa Rosa JC, and then I'm going to go to Chico State, and my goal is to major in mechatronic engineering and minor in aeronautical engineering.
Mechatronic, that sounds like robots?
It's basically robots, but it's the design, prototype, and production. So you learn about all the stages of it. And then I'd like to minor in aeronautical engineering so that I can mix the two and make drones.
Brodhead is one of those summertime gatherings with a loyal following of old-timers with lots of stories.
See, people come to me and they say, how long will it take to build this airplane? Because, you know, this is the modern age. And I say, well, you've got to understand the sky's been there a million years. It'll wait until you're ready. Let's think together for a moment. The bean pole's a wooden airplane. Yeah, that's right. First you plant a tree. That gives you some idea of what the time frame will be. In my library, there's a special shelf that has romantic stuff about airplanes, lore. The rest of it is pretty factual. And when I write about an airplane for a factual person, that's fine. If, for example, a friend of mine, William Wynn by name, he's better than an expert mechanic because he has the ability to write poetic statements. I resent it, but he writes poetic statements. For example, he was in a meeting one time and people said to him, well, the bean pole, it only goes 70 miles an hour and it can't take you anywhere. William said, stop everything. Let me tell you a little story. Last Thursday afternoon, Charlie Zilch over here in Podunk, Iowa, quit work at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, went out to the airport, opened the hangar, rolled his bean pole out, and went flying. He went 800 feet up in the air. He stayed here for 45 minutes and flew around. It was a different world that this airplane took him to. When he came back, he landed and put in the hangar. That's his other world. That airplane takes you somewhere.
Takes you away.
It takes you away, and that's enough. Another friend of mine, a British soaring champion, one time he printed this in one of his books. Philip Wills by name. No relation to Jim Wills. Philip Wills, a world soaring champion. Looked like an English professor. And he pointed out, when I want to go somewhere, I buy a ticket. If I want to fly, I go get in my sailplane. That's the difference. And
that feeling, right?
That's the whole thing.
So what is the Fly Now spirit? It's the determination that drives one to accomplish their goals. In our arena, it means finishing your pilot's license or building that airplane. But it can apply to any goal one may have. Don't give up. Draw your target on the wall and fly now.
Brian and Petey are flying home now. They found happiness in this day of flying. But perhaps we shouldn't be so concerned with our pursuit of happiness, but rather with the happiness in the pursuit.